Imagine a desert, an ocean of sand stretching to the horizon, burned by the sun, without shade, without life. For thousands of years, caravans crossed this land. Bedouins wandered through it, and the only trace of civilization were tents and the hoof prints of camels. And then, right in the middle of this emptiness, someone draws a straight line. 170 kilometers long, 200 meters wide, 500 meters high. A line that is supposed to become a city. This is the line. The most futuristic part of the NEOM project. A vision that feels more like science fiction than urban planning. A city without streets, without cars, completely vertical, where homes, shops, schools, and parks are stacked in layers, and people move on a high-speed train that is meant to cover the entire line in 20 minutes. Saudi Arabia says it will be a revolution in everyday life. Architects call it a reset in city design, and critics describe it as a desert experiment that will never work. Why does this line provoke such strong emotions? Because it is not just a building, it is a new definition of what a city is. For thousands of years, cities were round, sprawling, spreading sideways. Here we get something entirely different. A narrow corridor in which, according to the plans, 9 million people are supposed to live. If it works, the line will change the history of urbanism. If it fails, it may go down as the most expensive mistake in the history of architecture. For the Saudi authorities, the line is a symbol. Just as the Burj Khalifa became the emblem of Dubai, the line is meant to be the icon of a new Saudi Arabia. A state moving beyond oil and looking for its future in technology. It is not just a construction project, but a political statement. We can do something no one has ever done. But for an ordinary person, the questions are simpler. What does everyday life look like in such a place? Can you really live in a corridor where everything is meant to be within 5 minutes reach? Will people feel at home in a city that looks more like a computer render than reality? Abdul Rahman, a young student from Tabuk, speaks about the line with pride. This will be our legacy. Just as the pyramids once showed what people could build, this line will show the world we can create something timeless. Aisha sees it differently. But who will live there? Will we, ordinary Saudis, have apartments in this line? Or only foreigners who come for a while and then leave in private jets? The prologue to this story gives no answers. Instead, it leaves a question hanging in the air. Will the line become a dream fulfilled, or the world's most expensive mirage? Because in this line on the desert, like in a mirror, the whole of Saudi Arabia is reflected. A country on the edge between past and future, tradition and technology, religion and globalization. And this is where our story begins. How would a day look in a city with no streets, no cars, where every need of daily life fits into a vertical structure only 200 meters wide? Imagine waking up in an apartment on the 50th floor of the line. Your windows don't open onto a skyline like in New York or Dubai. There is no panorama of scattered skyscrapers, because the entire city is one giant wall. You look out instead at a monumental mirrored facade opposite you, the other side of the line. Between the two walls, in a gap 200 meters wide, stretches a narrow strip of green, vertical gardens, parks, and walkways. That is your courtyard. You take the lift down. The lift doesn't take you to a street, because there are no streets. It takes you to the transport layer where a high-speed train is waiting. They say that you will be able to travel the full 170 kilometers in 20 minutes. In practice, that means crossing the whole city faster than you can cross London or Paris in rush hour. On the way, you pass a service layer, a shop, a clinic, a school, a gym. Everything is supposed to be within a 5-minute walk from your home. You don't need a car because the city is designed for people to move on foot and by lift. For planners, it's a revolution. No traffic jams, no exhaust fumes, no hours lost commuting. But everyday life isn't just transport and shopping, it is also work. In the line, workspaces are meant to be scattered throughout the structure, mixing offices and homes. Imagine you work in a tech startup. Your office is 5 floors below your flat. In the morning, you don't sit in traffic or wait for a bus. You simply take the lift down, walk past a cafe, and you're there. At lunch, you walk to a garden that isn't a garden in the traditional sense. It is a vertical green space running the length of the city, with a climate controlled by machines. In theory, even in the middle of the desert, it is meant to feel cool and green. In the evening, you meet friends. Not in a bar on a street corner, there are no streets, but in a shared space. A futuristic plaza suspended several floors above ground, where holograms blend with plants. This is the new city center. Not a square, not a boulevard, but a continuous corridor of life where privacy and community meet in vertical architecture. Everyday life in the line is designed, in the words of the Saudi authorities, as a 5-minute utopia. Everything is close by, everything managed by artificial intelligence, which looks after your water, energy, air, shopping, even your health. And yet the questions begin here. Will people really feel comfortable living in a corridor? Will life without streets, back alleys, small unexpected corners and accidents become monotonous? A traditional city lives off its chaos, market noise, traffic, street musicians, random encounters. The line is supposed to be perfectly ordered. And there lies the paradox. Can perfection become the most elegant prison? Abdul Rahman dreams of such a life. Imagine it. No traffic jams, no hassle. Everything close, everything efficient. It will be paradise. Aisha answers. But where is the room for chance? For getting lost and discovering something new? Here everything will be planned. Is that still life? Or a simulation of life? Everyday life in the line is not just a question of logistics. It is a question of how much chaos a human being needs to feel truly alive. The line is meant to be not only a city, but a machine. Planners and investors are very clear. This will not be a traditional metropolis, but a system built on technology, designed to manage people's lives from beginning to end. At the heart of the line is a high-speed magnetic railway running along the entire length of the city. According to the concept, the 170-kilometer journey will take 20 minutes. In practice, that would mean speeds comparable to Japan's Shinkansen, but hidden inside an enclosed corridor. Every resident is meant to live no more than 5 minutes from a station. That means no private cars, no traffic jams, no exhaust fumes. But it also means the end of the street as a place of meeting. Transport becomes fast, efficient, anonymous. Energy for the line is supposed to come entirely from renewable sources. Huge solar farms in the desert, wind turbines along the Red Sea coast, and green hydrogen as a fuel of the future. On paper, the city is climate neutral, zero carbon footprint, zero emission living. But in reality, constructing 2 parallel 500-meter-high, 170-kilometer-long mirrored walls is an ecological challenge of unprecedented scale. Critics ask, how much CO2 will be emitted just to build the structure? Inside the line, vertical farms are meant to feed the residents. In this vision, lettuce grows beneath your apartment and tomatoes are harvested in gardens suspended dozens of meters above the ground. Artificial intelligence manages irrigation, lighting, and harvests. In theory, the city becomes self-sufficient. No more supermarkets full of imported food. Yet another question appears. Can such a huge population really feed itself from vertical farms, or is this a beautiful marketing story? AI is supposed to be the invisible manager of the city. It will coordinate transport, water supply, energy consumption. It will monitor residents' health, analyze their movements, suggest diets and daily routines. Officials talk about an intelligent system that serves people. Critics talk about a digital big brother. If every decision is tracked, if the city knows when you leave home, when you eat, when you exercise, do you not lose a part of your freedom, even as you gain comfort? The line is therefore a laboratory of infrastructure. On one side, faster transport than Tokyo, cleaner energy than Copenhagen, more high-tech farming than California. On the other, questions about privacy, security, and dependence on machines. Abdul Rahman is impressed. It will be the smartest city in the world. Everything controlled by AI. No traffic, no pollution, no chaos. Aisha replies, but what if the AI fails? What if the system breaks down? In a normal city, you can always find an alternative. In the line, you are completely dependent on machines. Technology in the line is meant to be salvation, but it could just as easily become a trap. In a city that functions as a machine, people will have to ask themselves, who really runs this place, the residents or the algorithms? Saudi Arabia presents the line as the cleanest city in the world. Zero emissions, zero cars, zero smog. In the visuals, the air is crystal clear, the sky permanently blue, the vegetation lush as if we were in Switzerland, not on a desert. But when we step down from the brochure to the ground, the real question appears, is any of this truly possible? The environmental narrative of the line rests on three pillars: renewable energy, green space, and sustainable water. Energy is supposed to come from solar and wind farms plus hydrogen plants. Green spaces are meant to be everywhere, on every level and in every segment. Water, the lifeblood of the project, is supposed to be desalinated from the Red Sea and processed so that millions of people can rely on it. It sounds impressive, but building the line demands millions of tons of concrete and steel, materials whose production is among the most carbon-intensive processes on Earth. The emissions are enormous even before anyone moves in. It's like trying to build an eco-car by first burning half the planet's resources in steelworks. The greenery we see in renders is possible, but depends on massive air conditioning and cooling systems. Keeping grass and vertical farms alive in temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius requires staggering amounts of energy. Yes, the energy is meant to be renewable, but the more complex and dense the city becomes, the greater the risk that its systems will be stretched to the limit. The biggest paradox is water. Saudi Arabia is a country where every source is precious. Desalination is technically possible, but extremely demanding in terms of both energy and ecology. Global reports show that desalination plants produce huge volumes of brine, concentrated salt that returns to the sea and kills life around discharge zones. If NEOM needs water for 9 million people, the scale of this brine production could threaten entire Red Sea ecosystems. Abdul Rahman believes it will work. If we have money and technology, we can do anything. People once said artificial islands in Dubai were impossible, and yet they were built. Why shouldn't the line be green? Aisha answers, but in Dubai, those islands are luxury for tourists. Here we're talking about everyday life for millions of people. If the water runs short, if the gardens dry out, this won't be an inconvenience. It will be a disaster. The environmental narrative of the line reads like a fairy tale investors tell. A city that breathes clean air and feeds itself from its own farms. But beneath the fairy tale lie bills, financial, ecological, social. The question is not, can we build a climate-neutral city? But can we build it in a place where nature has always fought humans for every liter of water and every patch of shade? Here we reach the paradox. The line wants to be a future city that solves environmental problems. It may instead become a city that is itself an environmental problem. In the promotional material, the residents of the line look like characters from an Apple advert. Young, smiling, dressed in minimalist clothes, walking on green terraces and gazing at a clear blue sky. But who is actually supposed to live here? This question keeps returning and turns the vision of the line from a futuristic dream into a social experiment. Saudi Arabia claims the line will house around 9 million people, roughly the population of a London or a New York. But the social structure raises doubts from day one. Will the apartments facing vertical gardens really go to ordinary Saudis or to the global elite, executives, tech experts, celebrities who will stay for a season and then fly home on private jets? One thing is certain, the line will need an army of workers. Robots can handle transport, AI can regulate energy and water, but humans will still have to clean, repair, cook, serve, build. In the Gulf, this role has long been filled by migrant workers from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and elsewhere. They drive the taxis, pour the concrete, wait tables. Will the line be any different? Will their lives also fit into the 5-minute utopia? Or will they live in dormitories hidden behind the mirrored walls? The idea of living in a corridor raises psychological questions. Traditional cities have squares, streets, suburbs, places where you can get lost, where life spills out unpredictably. In the line, everything is designed. Everyday life becomes a sequence of 5-minute distances: home, work, shop, school. Perfect logistics, but will that turn people into cogs in an immaculate machine? Abdul Rahman imagines it as paradise. We'll live like inside a smartphone, everything at our fingertips, nothing to search for. The city will take care of you at every step. Aisha answers seriously. What if people need to search? To walk down a street they don't know, to meet someone they weren't supposed to meet? Won't the line lock us into a corridor as perfect as a laboratory, and just as lifeless? There is also the cultural conflict. Saudi Arabia wants the line to be global, open to experts from Europe, the Americas, Asia. Yet it remains a deeply conservative country where religion and tradition shape everyday life. Can these worlds coexist in a single corridor? Can liberal Europeans, Indian engineers, young Saudis dreaming of modernity, and older generations who still remember Bedouin tents really live side by side in one narrow space? The line may become a city with no cars, but with invisible walls. Walls between rich and poor, between Saudis and foreigners, between the dream of the future and the reality of daily life. This is not just a question of architecture. It is a question of the human condition. In a 170-kilometer corridor enclosed in mirrored facades, will people find freedom or feel like prisoners in a golden cage? From the very beginning, the line has split opinion. For some, it is a vision so bold it can hardly be real. For others, it is proof that humanity has finally dared to try something radically new. The key question is whether this project will change the history of cities, or whether it is a utopia on the verge of turning into a dystopia. Urban experts look at the line with fascination, but also with distance. It's a reset in how we think about cities, say architects across Europe. Instead of uncontrolled sprawl, we get a precise structure. In theory, it solves everything: congestion, pollution, energy loss. Then they add, but cities are not only about geometry, they are also about chance, chaos, diversity. If you eliminate these, will people still feel at home? Critics are harsher. This isn't a city, it's a laboratory of social engineering, says one researcher in London. Others compare the line to dystopias straight out of Metropolis or Blade Runner. Imagine 9 million people packed into a single corridor. Doesn't that sound like a perfect machine of control? Then comes the political layer. Saudi Arabia wants the line to showcase openness, modernity, global ambition. At the same time, it is still a state that restricts civil liberties and censors public life. Can such a country build a city that is supposed to be an icon of future freedom? Yet alongside all the criticism, hope persists. For many young Saudis, the line is a chance to finally feel that their country is keeping pace with the times. It'll be our Silicon Valley, our Tokyo, our Barcelona in one, says Abdul Rahman. We used to look at Dubai with envy. Now they'll be looking at us. Aisha remains cautious. Are you sure? Dubai attracted tourists, but many Emiratis feel like strangers in their own city. Will we avoid the same fate? Hope and skepticism collide around the world too. Western media sometimes call the line the boldest urban project of the 21st century, sometimes a desert mirage. Commentators in Asia see opportunities for technological cooperation. Others, in India or Africa, ask whether their workers will be just cheap labor behind the mirrors. This is the real paradox of the line. The question is not just whether the linear city can be built. It is whether a society can be built inside it. Without that, even the most beautiful architecture will remain an empty shell. The line is like a huge mirror. Everyone sees something different in it: utopia, dystopia, or a huge opportunity. But one thing is certain: the world cannot look away. Saudi Arabia has already achieved one goal. Everyone is talking about it. The line is not just an architectural project. It is a mirror reflecting the whole of Saudi Arabia, Its dreams and fears, wealth and contradictions, pride and uncertainty. On one side, we see a model city with no smog, no traffic jams, where everything is within a 5-minute walk. On the other, we see a project that could easily become a dystopia, a golden cage in which humans become components of a flawless machine. The line is like a stroke of a pen across the desert, bold, straight, monumental, but also fragile. One crack, one major technological failure, one social breakdown, and the whole vision could collapse. Just as the Tower of Babel was meant to unite people but became a symbol of hubris, the line may become either the icon of the 21st century or its biggest mistake. Yet, regardless of the final outcome, the line has already achieved something important. The world now looks at Saudi Arabia differently, not only through oil, religion, or the desert, but through the lens of the future. Even if that future still exists mainly in renders. Abdul Rahman sees a promise in the line. This will be our legacy, our proof that we can achieve the impossible. Aisha's voice carries unease. And what if it's only an illusion, one that falls apart faster than it was built? Their conversation echoes the global debate between hope and doubt. And in this tension lies the greatest power of the line. Even as it exists only as a mirrored streak on the sand, it already forces us to rethink what a city is and what the future should be. But the line is only the first piece of the puzzle. If it is meant to be the heart of everyday life in NEOM, then Oxagon is supposed to be its industrial heart, a floating port and factory of the future. And that is where we will go in the next episode.